Okay, busy with some panel repairs. This kind of stuff, very, very fragile little clips, and they tend to break, and repairing them is a bit of a challenge at the best of times. That's another one there, so I'm going to be fixing all of those so that they could look a bit new. So I've started already. See, this one I've repaired, or in the process of repairing. I've still got to drill a hole. That second hole there was the previous owner that thought they could cable tie or zip tie it together, so I'm busy fixing all of that, and I'll prime it and paint once I'm done. I've got an airbrush, so that's the plan. So that's where I am. Alright, so the process I'm following is pretty straightforward. So these panels are fairly expensive nowadays, and the stickers and all of that, so before replacing, you try and repair as best you can. So what I'm using is actually some aluminium plate. That's an old fan, and that's what I'm using to reinforce things. It's really, really, really thin, and I've made a few templates for the little tabs that have broken off, and then I use that as kind of a rough backing. I'll show you what that looks like. That's it there. So you can see I've drawn a little template in that pink paper, and then I rough it up as best I can and apply it with some epoxy, apply a bit of pressure. It's quick drying epoxy, and then I backfill it a little bit as well. So you can see it's backfilled there with the epoxy, but there's a big kind of black piece of plastic, if I can get some focus. There we go. And that's ABS plastic, and it's hell of a strong. So what I've used is, there's a 12-volt battery, and it's got this little cover that goes on top, and this stuff is incredibly strong. It's actually stronger than the plastic on the panels themselves, and I cut that out roughly, and then use it in a swap of files to shape it into a little area like that kind of roughly matches. And I'm midway with these, so I'll need to obviously file them some more, neaten them, and I'll probably use a bit of body filler, and then prime and paint them. I've got some Yamaha paint mixed up, so it's a 2K base coat, clear coat. So that's the next step, is once all the epoxying and kind of fan dangling with aluminium and plastic and templates is done, we can paint. I just mic'd that aluminium plate, and it's 0.5 of a mil, so nice and thick. I can cut it with scissors. Really, really handy to repurpose that rather than chuck it away. I thought long and hard what the best kind of substrate would be, about fiberglass, but this stuff is amazing. So just out of interest, here's the tools that I'm using. So I've got an assortment of files, some really kind of handy little shapes with kind of concave shapes, very nice to kind of get into tight areas to help score and refine shapes. Really small little needle file, a little triangular sucker as well. Big file for kind of roughing up those pieces of plastic. And I've got a hole punch for these little kind of templates that I make, so it helps neaten things up. A pair of scissors and needle nose pliers really helps to actually form the aluminium into the shapes that I want, because nothing on these panels is ever flat. It's all curved, and there's a multitude of compound shapes. Little inti cutter, pen, brush to keep things neat. Not really. And then markers, and then I mixed epoxy with some toothpicks. So interesting little tidbit I've noticed. So these are both factory Yamaha panels. Look at the width of these tabs. Clearly the one on the left is snapped off, but it's kind of understandable why, because it's so much thinner on the far side. So something to consider. I may actually just bend a little piece of aluminium 90 degrees to go on this kind of outer edge for extra support. You can see the plastic had some kind of ribbing in there for reinforcements. Not that it helps much. It's one of the few panels I've ever come across that are not buggered. Okay, in the process of drilling and opening out that slot. I don't have the milling machine, doing it by hand and with files, so it's not neat now, but give yourself enough time and the correct tools and you'll straighten it up in next to no time. And for those of you wondering why I don't just Dremel it out, that cutter doesn't get in there, and the bits are also not quite small enough to get in there, so we'll see. I'll probably use some of these little suckers here to neaten it up, but by hand is probably the best way to do it. Same way gunsmiths do it. Small, by hand, off we go. There we go. Not looking too bad. I may just tweak it a little bit here and there. I need to just take all that paint off first. But this is what it looks like. I got a plethora of files to get in there and little side cutters to help cut it. And in the end, I actually cut most of the straight edges, just applying a bit of force down those lines there, and then neatening up with a little file. I'm very fortunate to have a whole bunch of little files, so you can see how tiny they are. They really do help. Okay, that's the little bracket. I'll clean it up with some thinners. I've roughened it up quite a lot with emery paper and the files to ensure that the epoxy has plenty of material to adhere to, but that's the little sucker. Rad. Right, next step is to fashion a little plastic bit that is going to go... Oh, actually this will be interesting. So that slots behind there somewhere. And then this is the little filler piece which I'll just use to replicate this, the height of this plastic, and then attach it to the back of that, so literally kind of completes that loop. Alright, that's the top half done. It's busy drying. It's not quite finger dry yet, but you can see the epoxy that I've used there to bridge the gap between that angle that I've made and the actual plastics itself. You've got to try and find strength in areas. So yeah, she's on. 10 minutes, she'll be dry. And here's my specialized tool for applying epoxy. Old newspaper and a toothpick and some epoxy. High-tech stuff. Alright, so largely sorted. Let me find some focus here. So you can see that's how it's looking. That's on the far side. And that one's complete. You can see that little U-shaped addition made out of the plastic that slots in. Oh, hands. And then there's the aluminium top side. I've been faffing on it and kind of tugging on it. It's so strong. It's actually quite something. I'm quite pleased how this came out. Okay, busy filing the shape and getting the epoxy a little set up so that the primer and body filler can adhere to it. Yeah, same thing that side. Looking good. I mean, that's a tiny little fill and it's taken so nicely, so there's a little bit of a concave shape to it, but that's where the body filler will kick in. Alright, that is with the first coat of blue, and it's it's looking pretty amazing. Once I've given it the clear coat, it'll look like it's factory. I'm absolutely thrilled with how that's turned out. That's on the reverse. And that's the little panel above the brake light. One or two small imperfections there, but with a bit of flatting and the gloss, pretty damn good. And before I forget, this has all been done with an airbrush, not a physical paintbrush or a touch-up gun. little old airbrush. And that's the final outcome. So panel on the left is the original, and the one on the right is the one that I've gone and completely recreated, bearing in mind it had sheared off there. I had nothing from there down, so all recreated out of aluminium, epoxy and ABS plastic. And that's the underside. Remember, they were also buggered. Both of these had pretty much the whole tab from, if you can imagine, the 12 o'clock position with these holes, all was all gone. So I recreated that with LE, epoxy and ABS to build it up. So very, very happy with the outcome. And that's the last little pieces as well. Remember, this whole section 45 is missing. I rebuilt the whole shebang. Quite chuffed with that, actually. Very chuffed indeed.